Good afternoon and welcome to City News 24/7. I'm Faiza Amin. A trade war could be on the horizon as the White House confirms that U.S. President Donald Trump will impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods starting tomorrow. Let's bring in Glen McGregor from Ottawa. Glen, there was a bit of back and forth earlier today, but are things about to get ugly between Canada and the U.S.? That's a big question.
They indeed appear to be so. It has been a roller coaster ride since Donald Trump was elected back at the beginning of November and made that threat pretty soon after to impose those tariffs on the first day in office. So that would have been January 20th. Then we heard April 1st as the new date. Then we heard February 1st. This morning, even on the eve of that date, February 1st, there was a report from Reuters news agency citing White House sources saying this was going to be delayed until March 1st and that there would be a period where other countries affected by these tariffs could make representations to the U.S. government to request exemptions for certain kinds of exports to the U.S. Now, though, we have some definitive word from the White House in the briefing. Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary for the White House, this is what she had to say.
The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. The president is intent on doing this, and I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
The outlandish comments that Justin Trudeau made today that provoked that response from Trump's press secretary was promising that Canada would retaliate against the U.S. tariff. That's all he said. Nothing really outlandish when you consider that they are saying, she just said she's going to impose these tariffs on us, and Trudeau says we're going to impose the tariffs on the Americans in response if they do it, and she calls that outlandish. This is kind of the thing that frustrates Canadian officials, and there are still officials in Washington right now. Melanie Joly, the Foreign Affairs Minister, as well as the Public Safety Minister, David McGuinty, both down there trying to press the case for Canada to get Trump to back off. I think they're probably realizing right now, if they hadn't already, that this is now looking very much like a fait accompli, that Trump is going to do this tomorrow. So the question now kind of switches to what kind of retaliation Canada will use. Will we match the U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar? From the comments the press secretary made in the briefing, it sounds like it's going to be a full 25% blanket tariff. She didn't say anything about exemptions for Canadian oil. There's been a lot of speculation that Trump, if he's going to impose these tariffs on Canada, was going to give a carve-out for oil that the U.S. desperately needs. About 60% of all oil that the U.S. imports comes from Canada. It accounts for about 25% of the oil that gets refined into gasoline. And so if they impose these tariffs on Canadian oil, it will dramatically increase the price that consumers in the United States pay at the pumps. And we know that Trump is very sensitive to that particular economic indicator. Will Canada respond with a blanket across the board tariffs? Will we respond with targeted tariffs intended to exert the maximum pain on Trump and people close to him? Today, Chrystia Freeland, contender for the Liberal leadership, former finance minister who dealt with Trump during his first administration, all the tariffs he put on steel and aluminum coming from Canada, she suggested targeting Tesla. That's the company, makes electric vehicles, owned by Elon Musk, who of course has become they call him the first buddy, really close to Trump, obviously has a lot of sway on his thinking, and of course also controls the social media site X. So Freeland's saying if you put the tariffs on Tesla vehicles coming into Canada, that may get noticed more than, say, just a blanket tariff on everything coming out of the United States imported into Canada. Of course, any tariffs that Canada puts in place on American-made products coming into Canada as a response is going to increase prices that consumers pay here in Canada. I think the government is planning, they're hoping to do this more deliberately, more targeted, in such that it doesn't affect, say, the price of food that Canadians pay. We buy a lot of produce, especially from Florida and from California. It comes into our grocery stores here. That's a big item that could be tariffed, but of course that would cost Canadian taxpayers a lot of money. So we have some certainty now. Hard to quibble with when it's coming from the press secretary in the White House in an official briefing to the White House press corps that it's when she says it's going to happen tomorrow. I think we now can positively say yes, they are coming, but we don't know what form it's going to take. We don't know exactly how this is going to work, and crucially, we don't know what date it will take effect, those tariffs, whether it will take effect tomorrow or it's just being announced tomorrow. Still a lot of unanswered questions, Faiza, but it's clear that we're heading into a major trade dispute with our closest ally.
All right, critical hours ahead. Our Glen McGregor in Ottawa, we thank you for this.
Thanks.